do we see this as bullish, or do we see this as
It's
damn, now we
bullish.
can't see what's going on with our funds kind of vibe.
Don't even
Bro, we're
start,
like,
bro. Don't even
look,
start.
I'll
I,
take it. I think a lot of people, take anything they can get at this point. I mean, we're like, if crypto was sex, we haven't gotten anything in a long time, bro. Like, this is just good.
I was saying earlier to somebody, like, everybody wants to call Richard a scammer, but a scammer doesn't stick around after the scam. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. I think there's an intent behind moving these funds, and I think they're going to be injected into something, whether that's building something or marketing, whatever it is. I don't think it's just pure extraction.
No, dude. Anybody who's saying the word scammer, I mean, that's just stupid. That's ridiculous.
Well, I get it in my mentions every time I post about Pulsechain. There's at least one
and
or two.
that word scammer is so thrown around in this industry. Like, a real scammer, in my mind, a real scammer is like a Sam Bankman-Fried. It's like like these people that want to throw the word scammer around and Richard Hart in the same sentence. They're just butthurt. It's just butthurt people. That's all it is. Now, you can disagree with some of the decisions. You can be butthurt about it all day. That's fine. But a scammer is a completely different person. It's a completely different situation. So no, he ain't no scammer. Nah, dude, the guy's been here. I mean, I gotta hand it to him a little bit. I mean, dude, getting chased after by the SEC is probably not the most fun thing in the world. Having to having to load a Interpol website and see your freaking mugshot right there is probably not very fun. I would imagine that's not the most fun thing in the world. So, I mean, but yeah, there's the idea of calling the guy a scammer, like, that's ludicrous in my opinion. But I mean, dude, we're using the network. Works great. Works fine. We just want ours to go up. That's all.
I'm gonna be honest with you. If I was on Interpol's most wanted list, that's getting framed and going on my wall.
Yeah, I think there's some
There's some.
outlying SAC funds somewhere besides this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of money still that people don't know where it is because it was
Yeah.
sacrificed from other chains. Breaking news, boys.
Yeah, look on
Go ahead.
chain. Look on chain. Just tweeted about the Richard Hart movement. Look on chain's got like 700K followers.
Oh, dude, that's a
Yeah.
big.
It's suspected to belong to Richard Hartwin, founder of Hex, Pulsechain and Pulsex, transferred 153.2 Ethereum, $608 million to new wallets over the past hours. He previously bought 162.9 ETH across 25 wallets between March 4th to the 8th, 24, at an average price of 3,800. He has also deposited 9,500 ETH, $37 million, into Tornado Cash over the past 6 months. Oh boy.
Yeah. At first
See
glance,
you
it's a
again.
bad look, right?
Well, I don't think it is. I think it's actually good because it's going to get eyes on like what's going on over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all spinning
I
it
think he
though. He's
deleted the
running or
tweet.
something. He needs to get out in front of this and say
Yeah.
something.
It's this non-front runnable amount of money that you can never figure out how much is left either. Let's say he wanted to trim off 100 mil and start moving around 100 mil, slowly put that over some time into the chain. Let's say there were people out there that would have front run that 100 mil because it's being drip fed from many different people now, hundreds of different wallets, and you'll never know where it came from specifically or how much. You can't be like, number one, you can't front run that, but number two, you don't know when it's going to end either. So you also can't sell the top as easily as if he was to never obfuscate this. Because let's say you're looking at a stack of $1 billion and he puts in 200 and you're like, that's probably all he'll do this cycle, and then you'll just nuke. But if he does it like this and throws 50, 100, it's like I was saying with that weekly thing, you never know when that's going to end, and you don't know how much he's done either. You'll just lose track. You'll lose all sense of track.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's right.
I made a tweet yesterday that was suggesting, like, why doesn't he stake that ETH, and that can create $25 million of buy pressure every year, which we know is something that, helps pump the chain like it did last year, got a 10 or 20x on all the core assets. when $20 million was blown.
Last month, Richard Hart posted, and let me quote, "They yelled scam at Hex to a 10,000x. I wonder if they'll do it again." So if Richard Hart is setting up for another 10,000x, how would he pull it off? That's the topic for tonight. If you were him, what would be the game plan? What would be the ultimate strategy to pull it off? And do you think it's possible? Would anybody like to start?
Could we maybe have the backstory of how it happened the first time first?
Absolutely, that's great.
Big chunk of Hex's price performance last time around was due to the fact that like this was venturing out into uncharted waters that people weren't used to before. Because like they say, well, Hex popularized Uniswap and decentralized exchanges, and it's really like it really got DeFi going. That was all uncharted waters back in 2020. Wasn't that much going on. Like prior to then, when you think of buying crypto, you think of like going to Coinbase or some other centralized exchange and placing your orders there. So because it had a lot of extra steps involved with it, and it was something that not too many people had done, and also because the liquidity even back then was pretty low, that was kind of like buying Bitcoin way back in the old days, like real old days, like 2010. From what I hear, you had to get a money order and meet some creepy guy off Craigslist in a dark alley to buy your Bitcoin. So because it was so nascent at the time, and because the liquidity then was very low, we weren't trading it. And also with the staking feature as it's designed specifically in Hex, that was also something that was very new, hadn't been done before. And because there was a lot of staking that went on, all of these things just kind of culminated together to push up the price, which not Fast is back. I think he can speak to in more detail, right? Fast?
I'll give it a shot. I think the bottom line is it came down to like adoption of, at the time, what was new cool tech on the blockchain. Probably one of the biggest factors was that it had immutable code. That was a huge selling factor, meaning code that could never be changed. Like the code is the code; it's going to do what it's going to do. The concept of staking was pretty big, and the fact that Hex allowed you to stake out up to 15 years to earn yield was like a major adoption factor, and a major diamond hands factor, which is a catchphrase you'll hear us say a lot. By staking your Hex for 15 years, there's kind of an enforced diamond hand option. Now, just for the new people, you can stake Hex for a day, you can stake Hex for a week. You don't have to stake it for 15 years, but it is on the table, and many people do. So all those things combined with Richard Hart being the person who was on the screen talking about it, debating Bitcoin maxis, debating Ethereum maxis, it really pushed it to the 10,000x. There was also just some straight math involved, right? Like, when he measures 10,000x, he doesn't go from the start price, he goes from the lowest price it ever was. And I'm sure he'll do the same thing with Pulse or Pulsex, Inc., etc. Whatever the all-time low is against the all-time high, that's how you measure your X's for marketing purposes.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, so now that we did it once, how are we going to do it again, Fast?
I'm not giving financial advice here, but I think a large part of it's going to come down to math. Like you guys have all seen, like in some of it's posturing and some of it's, some of it's hopium. But like we've seen the posts about, Hex could do this much if this much of the sack bag went into it and so on and so forth. But like it doesn't take very much to pump Hex to multiples of the current price. And the amount it would take to pump X to 10,000x isn't that much in crypto world, right? So, if Pulsechain gets the kind of adoption that other chains have, like gets on some big centralized exchanges, some of the bigger KOLs, influencers start talking about it, like the buy pressure just from, the crypto world in general could be enough to make that happen. If you work in the $652 million that's floating around somewhere that, we don't know what's going to happen with that, and we should have no expectations, but it's actually really easy with $652 million to 10,000x Hex. It's totally on the table. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but 100% possible just by the math. But I think the adoption factor is actually going to be the big thing, right? Like you have this huge community of pretty loud people who are by and large very intelligent compared to most other communities in terms of knowledge of DeFi, knowledge of crypto, knowledge of security, all those things. Like, you know, if you went and hung out in like a Solana community, like it'd be an extremely different experience. It's all just like, yeah, gaslighting and pump and dumps. Where we're clearly here long term, you know, like we're pushing 6 years. A lot of the same people have been around for that timeline. I've been around for about 4 years now, I think. That community, when people come into it and they actually see it, and it's tied in with those other factors, like, you know, like centralized exchanges, like a foothold in the main market with the bigger influencers. I can't see why it wouldn't do very well.
What I would also add to that, like for this time around, is that the liquidity is a lot lower. There is a lot less hex available to buy, because when we look at the liquidity that exists right now, it's only like 300 million hex that's available to buy. So it takes very little to move the price. And once the price gets moving and the green candles get going, it attracts new eyeballs, and people are looking at, okay, well, how do I buy this thing that just moved that much? And it becomes sort of a snowball turning into an avalanche from that, as like all the line of dominoes start to knock each other over.
Pesky.
One thing I want to point out that we have this time that we didn't have the first time is all of the cross-chain avenues that have come into existence since the first 10,000x. We have OX Coast, a direct fiat on-ramp, you know, directly into Pulsechain. We have Internet Money, who just released a big update this week that allows cross-chain swaps from Bitcoin. That could come into play as, unfortunately, it can be a double-edged sword. It can help bring funds onto the chain, or it can help move them off easier. We're going to cross our fingers that it is going to move in our direction instead of against us, though. But that is something that definitely wasn't around the first time.
That's a really great point. Do you have any more questions, Kim?
I guess with those differentials, what do you anticipate is the biggest bottleneck?
Like the biggest problem that's kind of like in the way of us getting that next 10,000x, is that what you mean?
Yes, and I guess you kind of mentioned not only do you want the price to go up, it's like the price going up is more of a bait, right, for people to get interested. And you need to have the next steps into what you want from the outcome of having all those eyes, right?
The
Yeah.
bottleneck is for sure gatekeeping. Like you have like major like listing services like CoinMarketCap gatekeeping hacks. Like it should be listed way higher throughout its history on the list of tokens they show, but they consistently gate kept it at around 200 when it should have been at times like, you know, top 10 kind of thing, or top 25 anyway. So that kind of thing combined with, you know, like influencers who aren't getting paid to show it. Like nobody here is getting paid to talk about hacks. So that, you know, that has resulted in some influencers literally shunning it because they were probably asked Richard to pay them and he turned them down, right? It's not on the table. Like there's no VCs, no venture capitalists here. Everybody's just, you know, the community for the community.
I was going to say gatekeeping. Fast beat me right to it, as he lives up to his name. But I'd say probably the next big thing that's in our way is that buying hex is a lot more steps than a lot of new people are used to, especially when it comes to like getting entry into the position. Because, you know, if I want to buy something like, say, Sui or even Sonic, we can do that pretty easily because they're listed on exchanges. Hex, Pulsechain, and all them, they're not listed on exchanges. And to get coins that are not listed on a centralized exchange, there's a lot more steps involved. Like, we kind of take it for granted because we're so used to doing it because we do this like every day. But to a complete new person, it is going to feel like drinking from a fire hydrant instead of a water fountain when they take in all the information they need to have to, you know, first you got to install a hot wallet in your browser. Then when you get that wallet installed, you got to add a custom chain to it. Then you got to go to this website to get on this decentralized exchange, and then you could buy it. I'd say that's probably our second most difficult obstacle. There is a lot of resources available though to show people how to do it. Like we'll all hold your hand, so to speak, or there's plenty of step-by-step tutorial videos for it. It's just is the person who's looking to get into Hex, are they motivated enough to look into it and go through all those steps?
Well, I was on the Pulse website, and I appreciate how it does suggest some tools to, teach someone. I wonder, because of the nature of the decentralization, if there's a way that could associate the brand with some of these resources more tightly. So it's a little bit more consistent and kind of guide the new person through exactly what you want them to review and understand. And then, the community part is great, but I wonder, like, just thinking back, how did you first understand it? And I understand things have changed significantly when you just started, but I guess the mindset of what you were thinking of first.
Anybody want to take that? I'll take it if nobody wants it, but anybody else want to speak on that?
I might have a slightly different comment than what I suspect you'll say, Cairo. Like when I came into the community, like it was already established. The Hexkins were already here. And I was like, whoa, these crazy people are like cultists. Like, like it's like from an outside perspective looking in, it's like they're so dedicated to the point where it's kind of crazy. And then you want to dig deeper to find out like why are they all so into this? Like what is the attraction? Why are they so committed? And I think like that that really changed my perspective. Like I start out being like pretty shy, like, okay, you guys are crazy. And now like, well, I'm, I have the tag on my profile. I'm clearly here to stay. Once you understand why they're so crazy, it either makes you crazy too, or it clicks and you get it. One of the two things seems to be happening.
Yeah, and also say, like, back when I got into it, it was also a matter of that's like, even though it was complex and there was a lot of steps, there wasn't a lot of other things out there to distract me. So it probably was easier back when I got into it because there wasn't a lot of DeFi going on. Like, we say Hex made Uniswap, or it put Uniswap on the map because it was like the most traded thing on Uniswap. And back then, Uniswap was the only decentralized exchange that we could trade on. We didn't have CowSwap or SushiSwap or any of these other ones yet. So while it was kind of, it was way different than just buying something on Coinbase and a lot of extra steps and everything. I think it was probably easier for me back then just because there was so little else that was competing for my attention at the time.
And I'm probably the newest speaker up here, Kim. So I always urge you to listen to the other people over me. I just started in February and I was a complete no coiner, born into crypto on Pulsechain, around the really smart people to where I was learning advanced concepts before I was learning the basis, and it was a train wreck. It took me a solid 4 months just to sort the information out and get it straight in my head. And the only way I was able to do that was by helping other people with their issues, and it made me realize where I had misunderstood things. That's the greatest thing I can say about this community is being the youngest member, one of the youngest members in it. The amount of support that I have received from all unexpected sources in learning this is unmatched in anywhere that I have seen in crypto since I've joined, because yes, I started looking and I don't see it anywhere else. We are a community.
I guess real quick, I gravitate towards your stories too, of like the initial fascination in the community and the belief that drew me in. I'm curious also about the comment of like all the other communities in crypto that I feel like have more, prevalence, at least from my circles, which is interesting. I'm sure there are, you said, reasons for it, VC, etc., marketing. So I wonder now that, crypto is getting a lot more attention with Bitcoin. And I saw it when I was in New York, right? There are billboards of these credit cards that are promising, some crypto, rewards back. And I think we're at a point in time where there are going to be a lot more people researching this. If there was, something more formalized now, it might be good to think about.
Thanks, Kim. That's good advice. I think some of us get so used to talking to each other that it becomes hard not to do shop talk with people from outside the community. Like, you'll even hear us use acronyms like EES and stuff like that, which stands for emergency end staking, which also shouldn't mean anything to anybody who hasn't been here a long time. So that's definitely something we could work on as a community. Come up with some some catchphrases, some comments, some instructionals that are meant for people who haven't been here for 6 years. Could be a thing.
That's what I really appreciate about you, Kim, is that you are new and you're giving us excellent feedback. One bit of feedback I can give you is I know you get hit pretty hard, and I block out anybody that's negative towards me or has a negative mindset. At first, I thought I could change their mind and I would try to communicate with them. But if they're shut down and they have a negative mindset or they're being rude, I just shut it down because your energy is, you only have so much every day. And so if there is anybody out there running you down or running you off or just, not appreciating who you are and what you're trying to learn, I would just say block them out or at least mute them. But I think that you have amazing energy. You're incredibly smart and you're helping us grow just by the feedback that you're giving us. So thank you for showing up today and last week. And you're teaching us and helping us too. Because you're right. The whole point of this space is to help new people and to help build their confidence. And I don't really think there's anything holding us back except for ourselves. We have the smartest, brightest, most forward thinking people in the entire crypto space, but we just forget what our capabilities are. And I think because the prices have been down for so long, some people have lost their confidence or they've lost their conviction. But I do think then a 10x from here, none of these excuses that we're giving right now are going to matter. Because when people see our own energy and us succeeding and just feeling great and being contagious, that energy it's contagious. And I don't think we're going to have a problem bringing people in. I don't care if we're listed with a centralized exchange or not. We made it to top 3 market cap last time. And, like Pesky was saying, we didn't even have some of the resources and avenues that we have now. So, really, the only thing holding us back is ourselves. And that's what we're all here to work on.
Thank you, Tam Tam. And yeah, I feel like the fact that the positive people are staying and the negative people are losing hope and doing their own thing, I think is a natural separation. And one thing that wasn't addressed in terms of what's different today is like literally all the tools we have in terms of AI, right? Like these, all these different study groups are being recorded. We can definitely transcribe them very easily and get like, notes published, right? Like different ways of making things that you already do that is helpful one on one, something that is distributed, right? Because you can't hold these for every single person. So I think let's just be creative, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look at a lot of successful, businesses out there, like Mary Kay, right? I mean, they didn't sell Mary Kay at Walmart or easy places to get, but people would have house parties and they would get together. And I think that will happen a lot in that sense, right? Where we are the network. The people that are the investors, we are the middlemen. We're replacing the middlemen. And so the more educated we are, and the more we build our own confidence to simplify these tools, because they really are very simplified tools to use. I mean, Hex really cannot get easier than buy it, stake it, and you're done. Or you don't even have to stake it, you just buy and hold. That's what these assets are. You don't have to go do anything complicated. That's what I was telling you last week. Like, don't get overwhelmed. I don't do any of the LP providing. I don't do any of that stuff. Like I am the most boring basic investor now and I absolutely love it. And when you're holding really good assets, that's all it takes. You don't have to go trade or do margin trading. You don't have to do options. None of that. None of that is needed with these assets. All we need is time. But the tokenomics themselves are set up to make us win. I personally believe that Richard Hart owns between 95 and 99% of the supply of Hex. And so when you really break down the math on that, it's not going to be hard for us to get the remainder off the market. And I know that's all I have been buying for the last several years, really. The last 4 years, I have just been all about Hex. And so I'm going to keep buying it nonstop, at least until it hits 10 cents. Then I might pull back to 5-day work weeks, but I'm going to keep working these 6-day work weeks because it is an opportunity of a lifetime and it can change lives. And that's what I do. I'm seeding to people. There was a doctor that was going to show up today, but he couldn't make it. He's going to come next week, but he was my patient on Saturday. And it's just seeding. It's not hard, but all of us should be doing it. You know, hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. What are you into? And he's like, hey, I'm into watches and cars. That's what I like to spend my money on. Oh, cool. Well, I like to spend my money on Hex. Oh, what's Hex? It's a cryptocurrency. And then I have this opportunity to open myself up. And he's like, hey, I'm into crypto too. I want to learn more about this. Cool. All right. Well, here's my phone number. And by the way, I do the spaces. I host the spaces on Tuesday nights for people to learn more about it. Show up and come introduce yourself. And he was really pumped about it. But it's just seeding people. It's not hard selling them. It's not being aggressive. It's learning about, hey, what are your goals? And knowing that the tools that we have, because most people with goals, finances play a big factor in them achieving them. Or if it's time, they want more time with their family. Hey, these tools are the answer. And this is how, and this is why. And you're in a great time right now. Hey, I was buying Hex at 14 to 46 cents. Right now, you can buy it for less than a penny. And, I'm not even going to start taking profits until it hits $1. But you don't even have to wait that long. A 10x for you could help change your whole life. And just seeding that in their head, and you tell them, hey, this is the Hex chart, watch this. Some people don't even know what a chart is, but just the consistency as well, right? Like the more someone hears about something and your own consistency and that you're serious about it, that's how I've been able to onboard so many coworkers and friends and family, is they see that I'm being consistent with this goal and that I believe in it so much that I'm willing to work 6 days a week electively just so I can buy more of these units. And so, you know what? During this whole bear market, I haven't had anyone freaking out and worried that they've lost their money because they see that I'm still committed. I am still very confident, and I'm playing the long game right along with them. And I think that when your actions align with your words, that's how you build trust. And that's also why I don't buy anything else. I know people are always trying to give me tokens, and it's very sweet. I've been treated so well by this community, but at the end of the day, I have to do what's best for myself and for Hex as a whole, because I view Hex as like my own personal business, but I don't have the overhead, I don't have the liability, I don't have the headache. And really the time that I spend, it's elective. I don't have to, but I'm so passionate about it that here I am on a Tuesday night doing more Hex, like I talk about it all day long because it's my passion, to help people solve their problems. And that's what these assets are all about. Hextech, I know you've had your hand up, so I'll let you speak now.
All right, thanks, Tam Tam. I just wanted to just jump on this last point before you guys move on to the more complicated stuff. But just as an encouragement for maybe the lay people or the people that are new in here, from my premises, and it's up on my Twitter profile, and I don't plan on changing it anytime soon, ever time soon. I simply state Hex is the better Bitcoin. And I have, there's been multiple reasons. Richard's put out multiple reasons for that in regards to the code, the dynamics of the contract versus the spaghetti code that has been used even outside of Hex in reference to Bitcoin. And people have seen the inflation bugs that have happened over the history of time and how it's hard to change or almost dangerous to change anything in the Bitcoin code. Hex is operating flawlessly. That being said, just going back and looking at historical percentages, understanding that Bitcoin has been around for 15 years. It's been around for multiple market cycles, but just using rough napkin math, the first cycle, like 2010 to 2011, it did just under 30,000% increase, going up to almost $30, and then it retraced down below $5, and then it subsequently did almost a 20,000, and then almost another 10,000, and then and it's been going through these market cycles. But for myself, in studying and understanding what hex is, and the dynamic of being able to stake, I actually still stake. I mean, with these low prices, I'm out there staking, and the bottom line is the fact that one, I made my initial stakes from day one. I built my hex ladder over a period of the first 3 months. Subsequently, I built a second one above my copies that I got with Pulsechain. But what Bitcoin does not have is it does not have an entire ecosystem. I mean, I look at it from my perspective as basically, Richard forked Hex, or forked, excuse me, Ethereum, and forked the chain because of the gas fee and the S load issue. So not only do we have the dynamics of Bitcoin, but we also have the dynamics of he created an entire supporting chain. His baby, I still believe, is Hex. And I just take Richard at his word. When he sat there and said, it has the potential to do a 10,000x in 2 years, it did a 10,000x in 2 years. Now, he also said, when I think we got to like a penny or 10 cents, he was like, what's 10 cents on the way to $100? Yeah, I wrote that down. I didn't forget. And I listen to the people, and it's sad to see some of the, excuse my French, the cry fagging that goes on, even by people who were stalwart people for over 5 years. And I understand people get tired. But the bottom line is the fact that it doesn't dissuade me at all, because of the fact that I believe that, as Richard stated, he's in it for the glory. He's not in it for the money. There's going to be people that are going to yell this cycle, scammer all the way up to a 10,000x or $1 and beyond, probably. It's just a matter of the fact that, people need to have their own personal convictions and not the convictions of KOLs. And don't believe me because, I've just been around and I'm just some old dude on the internet. Go and do the research yourself, convince yourself. And once you're convinced, hang on for the ride.
Yeah, it drives me nuts when people accuse Richard of abandonment. People forget that Hex was at glory, right? It was killing it, and the momentum was unreal. Something that I've never experienced before. The community, the just him, like his energy is something that I really can't even put into words. But he literally forked the entire Ethereum network because he felt bad for the little guys, the investors that did stake only $50 or $100. And the gas fees ended up being so expensive. I remember one time I paid like $300 for gas, and that wasn't even on, a big purchase. But that was insane for people. And he cared about the people. He could have just said, oh, well, it sucks for the low bidding investors, bad for you. I can't help it. It's Ethereum. I can't change it. And a lot of people, that's what they would have done. They would have just given up on those guys. But Richard didn't.
Well, and also in forethought, he said before all that happened, it was kind of proposed in one of his talks, one of his 8-hour tirade, the the never ending, you know long stream format, which I loved, was the fact that, like, he had said, well, if gas fees ever get untenable, he's like, I'll just fork the network, and then they did, and not only did he fork it, he didn't actually just fork it. He copied the entire system state over. There's a big difference between forking. There's a lot of fork dead chains. But the other thing that I was thinking about too is how many times along the way I've seen, and they have the website for it. It's bitcoinisdead.com or whatever it was, and how many different things have declared Bitcoin is dead. I'd like to see a website out there that says, hexisascam.com and all these different people, these, KOLs and these influencers that have decried, Bitcoin, or excuse me, Hex is a scam, and then, been proven wrong time after time after time after time. And I agree with you. I literally remember It was, I believe, I know it was over $1,200, but it was $1,200 and I think $40 it cost me to end one of my hex stakes at the peak of the madness. But it was worth it, trust me. That's all I'll say about that. But still, it was painful. I mean, I remember somewhere I screenshotted and took a picture of it because it was just insane. So, I can't. One of the things somebody said about, what would you do, or I can't even pretend to have the mind of Richard Hart, but I can sit there and say this: the guy's got, levers to pull far beyond what people, or we can comprehend in regards to the perplexity or the direction of what will happen with Pulse Chain or what will happen with Hex. I can imagine things. Imagine if somehow, some way down the line, Richard just decides to emergency end stake all the stuff that he staked, through the OA.
That would be interesting.
That would be huge.
Yep. But let's explain why it would be huge, right? Because I guess to anybody who hasn't been around for a long time, like what does that mean? Do you want to hit that?
No, go ahead, take it away, Fast.
Okay, so the Hex OA standing for Origin Account, which we associate with Richard Hart. So it has 95% of the Hex is staked on there. When Hex gets staked, it reduces the inflation rate for other stakers. And since so much Hex has been staked on there, it's going to reduce the inflation rate quite a bit, which some people complain about because they're not getting as much yield. I believe that was done going into a bull market to reduce sell pressure, right? So there's less people getting daily yield in Hex right now, which was advertised in the past at 38% APR, like 38% interest effectively per year. But right now it's reducing the sell pressure because a lot of people are doing 30 days, 60-day, 90-day rolling stakes and selling their yield and restaking their principal. And those people have complained a little bit when the OA made that change. But the OA has an option to emergency end stake, which is not an option that anybody else should do. When you emergency end stake, if you're less than 50% done your stake, you lose everything. So it's a terrible plan. It's the feature is there basically to keep, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, to keep scammers who hack somebody's account from affecting the entire community. If you emergency end stake and you're more than 50%, then you get a portion back, and it's more and more the closer you get to the end of your staking period. Plus at a certain point you get your yield, etc. But the point I'm getting to is that there's a feature in Hex that when you emergency end stake, half of that goes back to the origin address, and half of it goes to basically the other stakers. So if the origin address decided to emergency end stake 95% of the Hex that's staked, obviously a lot of that goes back to the origin address because it is one of the biggest stakers, and because of the feature in the code that sends that back there anyway, 50% of it. But it would still be a big payday for people who chose to stake, and the bigger stakers who would stake for longer would get the biggest payday. So it's interesting to think about. The other big feature of that is as soon as that happened, as soon as those stakes went away, that APR would shoot up. Probably back up to around 38%. So if I was Richard, I would, look at doing what he's done now of like reducing the APR in the bull, reducing sell pressure, and then increasing the APR in the bear to encourage people to continue with the process. So, I don't think Crispy agrees with me. He's a good guy to ask this sort of thing if he's ever around. But that would be my play. It would be like low APR in the bull. There's less sell pressure in the bear. APR is high. Stake your Hex. So you make money in the bear and realize it in the bull would be the game plan if you believe that theory to be true.
I think the less percentage of yield that we end up making, the higher we lock in on prices more long term. And I believe that for me personally, I would rather my asset be worth more and not earn as much APY than my asset be worth less and earn more APY. That's just my own personal opinion about it. But I do trust his judgment. And I think that he's always going to do what's best for the success of the system and, the future of the system.
This topic relates very well to the question that we received earlier this morning.
Yes, will you go into that?
Yeah, pulling it up here. So we got 3 questions we want to answer tonight. The first one, I've got like some answers for, but we'll kind of pass it around, see if anybody else wants to answer this here. So the first question, how does hex inflation create real tangible value? I know the code generates new hex tokens at a rate of 3.69% and gives it to those stakers, but my fear is that it gives people more coins to sell and take liquidity out of the pool that I put in without risking their principal. I was concerned it gives them more power to take liquidity and continue to stake large amounts. I saw one wallet get like 4 million hex tokens and restake their principal, but they didn't actually add any new liquidity. Maybe I'm seeing this wrong. I just want to know, what am I missing? So this is a concern that I've heard many times before. I think that our friend Gigapulse had like pointed out something like this similar to me on eHex on chain. But the idea that people can be staking hex, make a yield of new hex, they'll take their earnings and they'll dump them and push down the price and then restake their principal and do it all over again. And this is possibly draining the liquidity pool for Hex of all of its liquidity. I've got some thoughts and answers to this, but anybody else want to jump in on this first? No? Nobody?
I'll
Go for
answer
it,
it if you
Kyle.
guys want. I mean, it's T-share rate, right? You can only get the next highest ROI in the system. So whoever gets the next highest ROI, they're going to have to restake that to go out longer and larger if they want to maintain the share rate. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Okay, Fast, did you have something on that too?
No, I think you'll cover it well. What do you say?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, here's how I react to it here is like when they talk about just selling the earnings, gee, you know what that sounds a lot like to me? That sounds a lot like the miners for Bitcoin selling their mining rewards as they continue their mining operations. And that really hasn't hurt Bitcoin now, has it? I mean, it's the #1 coin. And then also other proof of work chains are like that as well with Caspa and when Ethereum was proof of work. Now, the change in rewarding the stakers the inflation of Hex, that was something that was very intentional by Richard Hart to kind of outdo or undo something that's negative with other chains. Like a lot of these other chains, they have kind of double negatives because, you know, one, the mining they do is it increases the supply, which is downward pressure on the price. And then the selling that those miners do is also direct downward pressure on the price. I would also add that there's a third negative because the mining equipment that they got to buy costs money, and that motivates the miner to sell from the start. But you see, Hex eliminated those at least one of those negatives, or all the ones that could be eliminated. You see, we cannot eliminate the downward pressure that comes from selling. That's impossible to get rid of. But what we could eliminate, and what we did, were the other negatives, because Hex costs you absolutely nothing to create it unless the currency we're talking about is time. It just costs you time. Now, a Caspa miner, the computer that you use for it, I think that's like $8,000 to start. Doesn't cost you anything, though, to get started in inflating and receiving inflation from Hex. Bitcoin mining costs are $108,000 on average right now. And the miners, what they're rewarded for is securing the network. Well, what Richard's vision was is, well, why don't we reward the people that secure the price by taking their Hex out of the market, thereby reducing the supply that's available to buy in the liquidity pool. So just from that, we start by rewarding the right people, people who are not motivated to sell. That's why they're staking, as opposed to people who are motivated to sell because they have lots of costs involved in the mining they're doing to produce the inflation. So that's where we get the idea of, well, Hex is programmed passive income for the people who believe in it the most. Another thing I'd say about liquidity drainage is what you have to remember is that right now the majority of the supply is going to the largest and most reliable and the most convicted believer among all stakers, which is the origin address. So if somebody really wanted to drain and damage the pool, they would have to compete with the origin address, and that is a contest you will lose every time going up against them. And what else I could say about it is that principal will always, the principal is being restaked. It's always greater in size than the amount of Hex that was received for earnings. So from that, we can almost conclude, at least the majority of the time, the positive effect that comes from staking the principal, from securing the price in staking the principal, is more powerful, or it has the potential to overpower the negative effect from the downward sell pressure of the earnings on the price. And what else I'd say about this, if we want to get into it, is inflation of a asset like a cryptocurrency. A lot of people think that inflation is automatically bad. It's not automatically bad. We got countless examples of this in all assets, not just cryptocurrencies. Anybody want to speak on that, though? Anybody got like an idea or an explanation for like how we could say, well, is the inflation bad for Hex? Like, is the inflation going to automatically be a drag on the price? Anybody want to talk about that?
Well, I think it was a drag on the price, and then the OA reduced that. But I think it's like to have the tool to increase and decrease inflation via OA staking, I think is like a significant thing, right? So you can deal with market changes, you can deal with adoption changes. And the interesting thing about staking is, like, let's say you staked and the APR was stupid low, like it is right now, which I don't have the number off the top of my head, but let's say it's 2%. But then the token does 1,000x, right? So, retroactively, you've 1,000x your 2% APR if you staked before that happened. The people who stake after that happened may still be at 2%, but if the price continues to improve, the APR retroactively could be fantastic, because like 1,000 times 2% is 2,000%, and that's a pretty good number.
Absolutely.
But in respect to the inflation with Hex, just a perception I thought I would sprinkle out for all you Galaxy brains out there to see your thoughts on it and maybe where you go with it, is my thought when the OA, but we've seen the OA before stake the majority of the liquid supply right before big payday, and that was a benevolent act. As those that were around would know, the idea with big payday is that if you were staked on that day, you were effectively going to like triple your return in that first day after big payday, right? But to eliminate the possibility of people gaming that situation, the OA staked and it brought the yield down considerably. Now, you still got a big payday for the majority of your longer stakes, but it kept people from coming in and just staking for a day or two to try to capitalize off of that. And then quickly it was unstaked, and then the APYs went back up to what people were used to, which was around 38% APY, which was kind of the standard. It's on all the printed material that I still have boxes of that I feel weird to give out now, because as we know, the OA has staked again. And then, okay, so the way that I kind of perceived that initially was like, damn, it's like I was enjoying my yield, and I was doing some rolling stakes, but I wasn't selling my yield. I was keeping it shorter length, because, hey, 2 more weeks, you don't know when the pump's going to happen, and, crypto's crazy. So I was just trying to keep as much liquid or near liquid as possible. So I was doing some rolling stakes and not doing longer stakes with stuff. Now, a lot of that's just held liquid, right? Because the rolling stakes aren't really worth it, especially on the Ethereum side, because the gas is going to eat up what little bit of interest you accrue in a 30-day or 60 or 90-day stake, depending on the side of the stake. But without getting too much in the weeds on it, the thing that I found actually as a benefit of it is that it immediately seemed to was kind of like quantitative easing and quantitative tightening by the Fed. And those of you that are more well versed in the TradFi markets and the banking systems, how those are valuable tools when you're trying to like spur on an economy or cool one off, right? So I think it was beneficial long term that he utilized that in the way that he did. And I still believe that as we come through this cycle and start to peak, inevitably it's a 4-year cycle, 4-ish, maybe a little longer this time. But, things are going to peak, and then there's going to be significant pullbacks. I mean, for every cycle it was in, Bitcoin was having at least 80% pullbacks during its bear cycle. And just in this last one, I think it was just short of 80% from its top. I guess the point would be, if you're going to want to keep people in your system, put yourself in Richard Hart's brain for a minute. I'm sure it's kind of scary and kind of amazing all at the same time. But try to put yourself in his shoes, in his mind for a moment, and think to yourself, if I want people to stay in my system, they've made a bunch of money, they've got their 10,000x or their 1,000x or their 100x or whatever we're going to do this cycle, whether it's in PulseX or whether it's in Ink or whether it's in eHex or Hex or whether it's in Pulsechain itself. Now what? Do you want them to sell? Because I know that the word on the street, a lot of people seem to think this in public and private. I'm going to sell the top and then I'm going to come back in the bear and rebuy my bags, right? I'm sure we've all heard it. We've all probably thought it at some point. But if you want to stabilize your system and keep more people in the system, you need something in your stack that is a good store of value. Well, the whole idea was that the store of value was Hex, and it was like a CD on the blockchain. And the benefit to it was you minted your own your interest or inflation, right? And you got a nice return on that over time. That was in hex terms, so obviously, the price may do what it does. So, but over time, you're ending up with more of the supply, and your benefit to yourself is that you're getting that supply instead of someone else. The benefit to the people that are liquid is that you've locked up that much supply, so there's less out there to buy and sell. So that's good for price movement, right? So my thinking would be, in my circular reasoning here, is that everything gets wild. Everybody wants to take profit. Do you really want to rotate all that into fiat? So you're going to lose how much to, traditional finance inflation over the next 4 or 5 years? Is that a smart move? Do you want to take that giant tax hit? To me, that seems kind of short-sighted. If you really believe, right? If you really believe in DeFi and this is a long-term solution to things, I have 15-year stakes. Why would I bail out and go liquid with everything for the next 4 years? I mean, do I not believe that my 15-year stakes are still going to be worth stuff? I got a quarterly staking ladder. So you can do the math. How many stakes have I got coming out over the next 10 to 15 years? A lot. So I'm not going to abandon that. I'm going to want to restake, but maybe I'm not as incentivized to do that if we're still at 1.5%. So here's my theory. I don't know, but it seems to me it would be prudent at some future point that some of those OA stakes emergency end stake. And if you understand how the emergency end stakes work, 50% of it goes to people that are currently staked. So yay for us. It's kind of like a little mini big payday, right? It'd be a lot of buzz. People would be talking about these giant stakes that have been emergency end staked and penalized. Well, guess where the other 50% of the penalty goes to? Back to the OA. So still in secure hands, right? So it's like it's going to reward people to a degree, and then it's also going to go back into the hands of the OA, which has been a benevolent OA from day one. So to me, you can do that by slowly pushing or pulling that lever, just like the Fed quantitative easing or tightening of that rate. So now all of a sudden you've got Hex, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm getting ready to cash out a bunch of stuff, but I could either keep it in Hex or rotate it into even more Hex and stake it, because now the yield's like 17, 19%. I can't get that anywhere else. I know that it's worked for 5+ years flawlessly, and it's worked out in 2 cycles now where we've gone to new all-time highs. Looks to me like we're on the track for a 3rd cycle to reach yet another all-time high. Why would I not want more Hex over that period of time and avoid the tax consequence of going into fiat, not to mention the inflationary down pressure on the dollar, right? So that's my rant.
His idea on the Fed is really important. Like, if you look at the ethos of Richard Hart, it's own large amount of the supply and have control, where you can penalize short-term thinkers and benefit long-term thinkers. And you benefit the long-term thinkers by holding that value in the chain. So I almost call it like he entraps us with the SAC fund, but like he's looking out for everyone's best interest. In this cycle, we're going to see that.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Even if he doesn't emergency end stake, though, his first big stake comes out in February. Ooh, Crispy's in here. Let me see if he'll come and speak on this. And I think that he staked like every year up to 10 years. And then he went ahead and did a 15-year stake also. So I think that first one that ends, that's going to increase the APY. And then each year it's going to continue to increase. And in my opinion, the only stakes I'm doing are 5 stakes, because I want to stake after the OA expires. So I think his last one expires in February, maybe, or February. No, might be February of 2039. Maybe it's 2040. So, like, let's say you stake now, or you stake 6-month or 1-year stakes, and let's say the 2026 bull run is over, then you take that money and you stake that into the 2041 bull run, and then you have a year or two of stakes where you've compounded. And at that point, as long as he doesn't stake again, you're going to be collecting like 160 hex per T share at that time. When I ran the numbers with Crispy, when he and I were talking, those are the numbers that we came up with. I'll confirm that with him. But that's why I'm saying, even if he doesn't ever emergency in stake, I believe that it is going to start improving again, starting in February.
Just to confirm, we're running a proof of stake. So when you think about staking, is to keep the network honest for the blockchain. So if you were to try to cheat for any reason and try to lie on a blockchain, your stake would be what you would lose. That stake would be, dissolved. Is that correct? And that's why you're getting paid on it?
Well, in this case, no. It's probably a misnomer. We're probably better off calling it mining, even though it's, people would argue it's not mining, because this is not blockchain level. This is contract level, and it's specifically Hex. And Hex has an emission rate that's determined by the supply, and that emission rate or inflation is spread against people who hold T-shares. So it's a little bit of a different animal in that way.
So the
Hey,
T shares
Crispy.
would be,
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
So the T shares would be on the EHEX, right? That protocol, because that's just a smart contract. And then on Pulse chain, it would be the Pulse staking, which would be the validators. And then the Hex on Pulse would be just simply like a layer 2 smart contract for yield. Is that correct?
No, let me see if I can break it down for him, Crispy. Pulse chain on or Hex on Pulse chain is exactly the same as Hex on Ethereum. It's a system state copy, runs on the same smart contract, and basically it is like a certificate of deposit at a bank. So if your grandma gave you $100 CD for 5 years and it earned a certain interest rate, and 3 years in you got a little greedy, maybe two, let's say 2 years in of the 5 years. You just like, hey man, I want that $100, and you go to the bank, and the bank is like, you know what? Here's what's going to happen. We're going to give you the face value of the CD, but you're not going to get the interest because you didn't wait the 5 years. So you're being penalized. You're going to lose the interest. You're going to get your principal back. The way that the staking mechanism works for Hex on both chains in the smart contract is if you stake it, there is a significant penalty for you if you try to get out if the stake is less than 50% complete. So if you do a 10-year stake and it's less than 5 years old and you try to end that stake, you are going to lose not only any interest you've accrued, you're also going to lose all the principal. So it is a hugely punitive penalty and highly incentivizes you to stay staked for the entire length. After you, pretty much by the time you get past the 50% mark, it's kind of proportional how much of the interest you'll keep, and your principal will be safe at that point. So you can end early without losing principal and keep some of your interest along the way. But the only way you keep all of it is if you honor the stake, and that's what people a lot of times you'll hear them refer to as the truth engine.
So
So
it'd be a
so that's
time
what that.
locking logic.
Yes. Yep. And then T shares are just a representation of your stake. So basically, there's more mechanics to it, but it effectively simulates compounding interest because since the T share rate always goes up, anyone staking after you is going to get a worse T share rate, which is how many hex they're going to get per T share per day, than you would. So it simulates compounding interest as though you were earning actual compounding interest. So it's a pretty ingenious mechanism that Dev Kyle and Richard had worked out back in the early days to make that attractive long term. And then yeah, so that's, I mean, in the long and short of it, that's kind of it, unless I butchered something and someone wants to correct it. But I just wanted to reframe my question for Crispy, who may not heard it. Crispy, what we were talking about is the possibility of Richard utilizing attractive hex staking interest to keep people in the system as this bull tops and starts to come back down. Because obviously, the other options are not super great, right? You get a big tax burden, you go all to cash, so you owe a bunch to Uncle Sam, and you're going to be pounded with inflation on those dollars. So ideally, you'd want to stay in the Hex and Richard Heart ecosystem. So what better way to do that than to re-incentivize people to start staking longer term? And then Tam pointed, and I was speculating that maybe there would be some emergency end stakes to start to ratchet that interest rate back up to make it look like a viable option for people. If it's 1.5%, maybe I'm fine with being liquid, but if it's all of a sudden it's back up to 15, 18%, now I'm more incentivized to go ahead and start staking some stuff out. And since we just had now hopefully our second all-time high in our second cycle, then we're gonna maybe do that again in the third cycle. So why would I stay all liquid, or go all to cash? might as well stake it, get that yield, end up with even more hex in the next bull run. So then Tam had pointed out that there was a large stake from the OA that's coming out in February, and that's where I had speculated that you had probably already quantified it and would know approximately like how much would that impact with all other things remaining constant. If that stake alone ends and does not restake, how would that impact the interest rate? Because I know we're currently around 1.5, 1.7, something like that, as far as APY on hex stakes.
Yeah, overall, I think if you look at a Quattro Cinco, it's competitive with treasuries at the moment, in that 4 to 5% range long term. And so, yeah, you are correct that the shorter the stake, the less T-shares you get, so you get less of a payout. I don't have the number at my fingertips at the moment. We can obviously go get that at some point, but yes, if the OA does not restake, payout will go up for everybody else who's left in the system, right? So the APR, the APY will go up. And then, what other people do will affect it as well. If they don't stake, it will go up as well, right? And it's very unlikely in the current situation that it goes down at this point, right? It's very hard to come up with a case to say that your APR will go down. Now, the APR we're talking about is in hex terms, not in USD, of course, right? Because you're getting paid in hex. And so it really has become, a speculation. There's always been a speculation on the price, but the idea is if you can basically get something that performs like a treasury bond, but be exposed to mad crypto volatility, right, and price appreciation, that can turn out to be a really big thing. And so your point about incentivizing, yeah, I could see some scenarios where we might want to accelerate the payout, but of course, none of us have any control over that directly. At least not like the OA. In general, just like a general comment, the APR goes up every day, just a little tiny bit, might not even measure, and that's based on what's happening. So when people get on the merry-go-round and they're going along, their APR or APY, depending on how you want to call it, goes up over time, anyways, because there are fewer and fewer T-shares that are being created. I think that hits the answer to the question you're looking for. So it's going to come down to what the OA does and what other big players do, and then of course what the general user does.
Awesome, thanks, Crispy. Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, at some point, I know you got a full plate, but if you played around with that and were able to quantify an approximation of what the APY might be after that stake ends in February, that would be interesting to me and probably some others, just to see if it's starting to edge its way up.
Yeah, we can do that because we know how many T-shares they are. But
Right.
The other side of the coin is the Johnny Chaos of random. This idea that there are all of these stakes that are out there, whether they're OA stakes or known to be OA stakes or not. There are a lot of stakes that are out there that are past their 50% now.
Yep.
And so we have not seen capitulation on those stakes. People have not, I mean, sure, some people, but we haven't seen like a big line of people like in the gold, the gold exchange lining up to emergency end stake. So a lot of people are valuing those and they have not emergency end stake them. That may change with mad price appreciation because any normal person, if they do have $1 million hex that they could actually pull out of something, and if it was worth 50 cents, they'd have to be thinking about it. I don't know if they would do it, right? They'd have to pull the trigger. So there could be a significant amount of emergency end staking with price appreciation, which would also drive APR, making it more attractive for people to get in.
Yeah, and the people that remain stakes having basically like little baby big paydays with all those emergency end stake penalties coming in. So yeah, it's going to get spicy quick. It's not going to be boring, that's for sure.
Yeah, it'll be pretty exciting. I think also you got to keep in mind too that the way the OA has set things up, and again, I don't have the percentage, but a great percentage of the stakes right now are OA stakes. He couldn't stake anymore. I mean, literally almost could not have staked any, right? And so that means that the OA not only gets 50% of whatever the penalties are, but they also get a big share of what would have normally gone to the users. And so it's definitely a recirculation, right? So the OA could emergency end stake and basically pay itself a substantial amount of penalties. And the users who are riding along, yes, they'll get their little mini paydays, but it won't be as big as maybe in the old days.
Yeah, I spoke to that earlier. How it could be a little bit of a buzz creation event. You know, if there was a big EES of one of those stakes, because it's kind of like a little, homage to the people that remain staked through that. And that, it'd be interesting to see when and if something like that would occur. But the emergency end stake thing has been fascinating to me too, because it's like that was a question around the last cycle too. Like, would if you had nukeable stakes, like stakes that weren't going to be completely nuked, right? Just partially nuked, like a neutron bomb, maybe not like a full on, intercontinental ballistic missile, but to wipe it to zero, would you end stake? Like, at what price would the thing have to be to make you stomach the loss in hex terms? And Hex Gita, I don't know if you're familiar with his pulsecharts.com. It's a portfolio tracking site amongst other things. And he actually has a little function there that I encouraged him to create, because it was like a dream of mine to have this information, because there were other portfolio trackers where you could see what the value of your stakes would be if you ended them now. But my thing was, I want to predict. It's like, what if I wanted to end them at Christmas? What would they be worth if the price stayed the same? And then he leveled it up one. He goes, well, hey, it was like, how about if you could also predict the price? So you can actually go turn that on in your portfolio, in that portfolio tracker, Pulse Charts, PLScharts.com, at Hexgita, Geta is the dev on that. Super smart guy. He's been on What the Hex with us more than once, I think. And but you can toggle those things on. It's really interesting to see, like, oh my God, it's like, if Hex is at, $1, geez Louise, it's worth that much. But I'm leaving this much on the table by emergency end staking, because this is how much the penalty is. Would I really want to nuke it? So that kind of helps people maybe make a more informed decision. Because I've also seen people that have ended stakes and then were unpleasantly surprised that they had done their calculations wrong, and their penalty was much higher than they anticipated. And they're, once you push the end stake button and confirm it, it's over. So I'd encourage you to check that out if you're interested. I think that's something that, Crispy, that you would enjoy.